So much blooming. Good evening. Beautiful day for a run. So, why am I a believer? Here I am running, experiencing God every day. But there's plenty of people who say they have no experience of God. And I just think it's so amazing. You know, there's all kinds of logical arguments. But the experience of God is the experience of truth, goodness, and beauty. I don't see how I, as an atheist, if I were, would have any reason to believe in truth, goodness, or beauty. Beauty is the primal one, the one we experience first. Very often in arguments about religion versus not religion, people assume truth, goodness, and beauty exist, atheists and Christians alike, and don't wonder, why is there truth, goodness, and beauty? Why are things beautiful? Why are there things that are true and things that are not true? Why are there things that are good, things that are not good? We know there are, but why? I remember when I went to college, I was so passionate for the truth. And sometimes you only get relativism back. But, you know, it's a deep look into the underlying cause of that yearning for truth. I get it. Some people become professors for the salary, the long summers, the easy week. You know, others put in so much work that there's no reason for that easy week. They don't just stop at, say, associate professor. After the associate professor, they start working on a 20-year huge research project that will never pay back benefits to the extent that short little studies would do. And those are the people that have some underlying belief in the truth. Otherwise, why would you? I don't have a tenure line, and I still research and write. You know, there's nothing stopping me from doing any level of research in my search for truth. And there's nothing making me do any. So many don't get a tenure line and never do a study again. Heck, some people do a tenure line and never do a study again. I've definitely published more than a lot of folk out there with tenure lines, even at Research One universities. But that's not the point. That's not why I do it. I do it for this underlying knowledge of the truth, and I yearn for it. I want to know the truth. And it sounds silly and naive in a postmodern world. It sounds silly and naive to anyone who doesn't believe that there's a truth that we can understand, that's meaningful, that there's a good way to do things. You know, to some extent, as a praxialist, as somebody that's used Marx, right, as a Marxian, I guess, you know, as definitely Freirean, you know, they tend to have some sense of truth. And my use of Ivan Illich, the great priest critic, maybe there's less of a belief in truth. Or maybe it's more because it's so willing to keep going back into that well and critique harshly. The truth isn't for those who do one study of their life, get published, and feel some accomplishment from that praxis of publishing, or somebody who publishes a bunch for 6 years, gets a tenure-line job and stops, or even somebody that maybe does research they know is not meaningful, but that it'll get published. Look at this sky. I know there's truth. And so I believe, because there's no reason for there to be truth. There's no reason for there to be goodness. There's no reason for there to be beauty. It's all gratuitous, right? Undeserved. Unique, distinctive. Something that just is. There's no non-religious reason for there to be beauty, goodness, and truth. But they are beauty, goodness, and truth. They exist. And so if you're interested in the truth, you have to wrestle with those facts and maybe even do a little bit of research like I do. I know my new research may never be able to touch on those things. So we leap into faith. The faith of my birth. The Catholic faith. And that's not to compare it to other faiths. Not at all. Not even polytheistic faith. How could I possibly judge them? If they lead you to see that truth, goodness, and beauty, who am I to judge? Right? I'm no pope. So I can choose to share the beauty, goodness, and truth of the tradition I've been on in my life. This path, which I find ever deepening beauty, truth, and goodness in God, in my life, and in our rituals, in our yearly cycle, in our mysteries, in our sacramentals, in our faith, in our hope, in our love, in our charity, our good things we do in the world. Because the alternative for me is despair. If I have no reason to believe my own senses that there is truth, goodness, and beauty, wow, for me that's despair. I just don't get what else it could be. And I think pretty well. God put a pretty big brain on these shoulders for some reason. Growing up in one of the poorest families in a poor rural town here in central PA. That was a pretty long rant. Some people might like it, but some people not. Hopefully you at least find it relaxing. Maybe it helps you get a nap. Or fall asleep at night. I don't know. I tend to have a fairly calming voice, I think. As a Franciscan, I live by peace. When I fail, it's always a failure of peace and gentility. Lord God, help me to be peaceful and gentle. For how else can I be fully me without the relationship I have to all the people in my life? What are people, God, that you regard us, that you care for us, that you love us? I had a professor in undergrad, humanities professor, who I was 100% sure is an atheist. So firm was his critique of the soul. He started a class asking, what makes a human, right? And I said a soul. And he had such a strong critique that I was sure he's an atheist. And then I saw him in church.